World of Warfare presents the Battle of Dunkirk. After Adolf Hitler's invasion of Poland on September 1st of 1939, Europe experienced an 8-month period of relative peace known as the Phony War, or Sitzkrieg to German soldiers, when no Allied land operations took place along the Western Front. While the people of Great Britain clearly enjoyed this period of calm before the storm, Hitler's lull was not due to a change of heart over his empire-building aspirations, but rather due to the fact that his main Blitzkrieg force was busy invading Norway and Denmark, a lull that allowed the British Expeditionary Force, or BEF, to be dispatched to the Franco-Belgian border with the goal of pushing the Germans out of Western Europe. Instead, as 1940 progressed, Hitler's stranglehold on his newly acquired countries increased in tandem with his repeated forays into new territories, at last ending the Phony War period on May the 10th, when the Nazis invaded the neutral Low Countries of Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg. The Nazis' Blitzkrieg proved to be a vicious onslaught against civilians, as the Luftwaffe in particular rained down terror on European cities. Ironically, on the same day that Hitler's Blitzkrieg began, confidence in British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's government had reached a low point, leading to Chamberlain's resignation, followed by the rise of Winston Churchill, an appointment that would inspire the British people throughout the coming dark years of war. Under Churchill's firm-handed leadership, a wartime spirit of defiance soon took hold across the length and breadth of Great Britain, and despite the fact that the nation lacked any immediate threat to the BEF along the Franco-Belgian border, on May 14th, a naval staff officer at Whitehall had a message broadcasted to the public after the 9 o'clock news, stating that the Admiralty have made an order requiring all owners of self-propelled pleasure craft between 30 and 100 feet in length to send any further particulars of them to the Admiralty within 14 days from today, if they've not already been offered or requisitioned. Although the name of the staff officer was never recorded, his far-sighted vision for a potential troop evacuation across the English Channel did much to set the maritime nation into a state of advanced readiness. Offers from boat owners inundated Whitehall phone lines, from commercial fishing smacks to leisure craft to tugs, ferries, and freighters, waiting on standby for a yet unspecified order. Within a scant few days, France was suddenly overrun and under siege by the Nazis, who swept into the country with staggering efficiency, which in turn trapped the Allies in a seemingly inescapable pincer movement between General Fedor von Bock's Army Group B to the east and General Gerd von Rundstedt's Army Group A to the west. The invasion occurred not along the Maginot Line, as the Allies had anticipated, but through the Ardennes forest, before moving steadily along the Somme Valley toward the English Channel. Bottled up in a 60-mile deep by 15-mile wide corridor, most of the British forces were still around Lille, over 40 miles from Dunkirk, while the French were farther south. As the Luftwaffe strafed and bombed retreating Allied troop formations, the only hope for a breakout lay with Allied troops from southern France coming to their rescue. Yet BEF leaders at the front and those back in London quickly embraced the improbability of inserting reinforcements in time to save some 400,000 British, French, and Belgian soldiers. A retreat to the English Channel and an evacuation by sea was now the only viable option, although the Admiralty grimly assessed that only a fractional percentage of men could be saved, with estimates just slightly north of 10%. While Calais and Dover represented the shortest routes back to England, the Germans' presence in both regions made Dunkirk the last option for a sea rescue. Despite its rank as France's third largest harbor, Dunkirk was less than ideal in terms of a mass rescue operation by sea, since the shallow waters along the port's adjacent beaches would limit how many large naval vessels could get close enough to evacuate the Allied troops, making the little ships of Dunkirk, as they became known, a vital asset in the challenge to come. The push to evacuate hundreds of thousands of trapped Allied soldiers got a boost from Hitler himself, who on May 24th ordered a halt to the advance of German panzer divisions pressing in on Dunkirk. The divisions were told to hold the line of the canal and make use of the period of rest for general recuperation. And given the fact that the Germans arrogantly believed that the Allies were doomed at Dunkirk, German troops largely believed that the situation left Hitler and the German High Command with a sense of little urgency to finish the task at speed. While historians still hotly debate Hitler's ultimate decision or blunder, most agree that his decision was based on his generals' concern over an Allied counterattack, much like the failed counterattack south at Arras on May 21st, as well as Luftwaffe commander Hermann Göring's insistence that his superior air forces could easily halt any evacuation attempts at Dunkirk. Codenamed Operation Dynamo, the evacuation of Dunkirk was green-lighted on May 26 after Winston Churchill and most of his cabinet decided that further delays would risk even more BEF lives. 2 days later, the decision was validated when Belgian King Leopold ordered a ceasefire before surrendering to the Germans, dealing a bitter blow to the Allies' cause when missing Belgian soldiers left glaring holes in their defensive lines along the French and Belgian coastline. For the trapped Allied soldiers, they continued to make their way toward Dunkirk, the majority without sleep, food, or water for days on end. For those that made it to Dunkirk, they dug what little fortifications they could in the exposed dunes of the beach, making for easy targets by Stuka dive bombers and German artillery. The evacuation of Dunkirk was completed in a matter of days, but for Allied troops on the beaches around Dunkirk, the entire ordeal felt more like an eternity. With death all around them and little information coming in, the phrase "the spirit of Dunkirk" was born on the overcrowded beachhead, when trapped soldiers soon realized that if you could control your fear when the Germans attacked, it was possible to fight back. Survivors have frequently recalled that the noise was the worst part of each attack, but a steady, cool, accurate eye and a rifle could bring down a diving bomber quite effectively. On May 27th, as the BEF fought back to the Dunkirk perimeter line, the Le Paradis massacre took place near the Labassie Canal, when the 3rd SS Division, Totenkopf, machine-gunned 99 British and French prisoners. Surrendering with white flags from a farmhouse near the French village of Paradis, some 50 miles from Dunkirk, an English-speaking German officer directed the prisoners to an open field where they were searched and divested of everything from personal letters, weapons, and cigarettes. They were then marched into a pit where machine guns had been placed in fixed positions. Captain Fritz Knocklein gave the order to fire, at which point the prisoners were executed. Those few who survived the machine gun fire were summarily stabbed to death with bayonets or shot dead with pistols, save for 2 soldiers who played dead until well after nightfall, before crawling to a farmhouse to seek aid for their injuries. After the war, a British tribunal in Hamburg found Captain Knocklein guilty of war crimes before hanging the man for his offense. Other actions exploded simultaneously alongside the Le Paradis massacre, including the Battle of Wishat and the action at Pope Raj, both engagements buying additional time for the evacuees at Dunkirk, as well as some rather egregious missed opportunities for the Germans' 6th Panzer Division to decimate the Allies' 44th Division at Pope Raj. As the Allies fought on, the Luftwaffe dropped not only bombs on Allied servicemen, but leaflets that read things like, "British soldiers, look at the map. It gives your true situation. Your troops are entirely surrounded. Stop fighting and put down your arms." During the growing atmosphere of terror at Dunkirk, back at Whitehall, the Admiralty finally came to grips with the reality that evacuating the stranded men was far greater and more urgent than they had originally considered, leading Vice Admiral Bertram Ramsay to tell his peers in the Admiralty, "We may be able to do a much bigger thing at Dunkirk. Can you get every available craft round to me within 24 hours?" The response could only be described as extraordinary when civilian fishermen, tugboat skippers, and yachtsmen were given little information about the operation they had volunteered for, other than it was likely to prove dangerous. With nothing more than tin hats for protection, Britain's most unlikely fleet left the English coastline under cover of darkness, and when trapped Allied servicemen at Dunkirk saw the flotilla of arriving boats, the possibility for salvation sent a wave of relief over the men. Nor was there a panic or rush for the boats, instead witnessing men waiting patiently for their turn, despite the Nazis' ongoing attempts to kill them where they stood. One volunteer skipper recalled machine gun bullets and bombs were falling like hail around the rescue boats and the troops left on the sands, waiting to be taken off. I took my boat ashore to the nearest group waiting shipment. I had my boat full before I could say Jack Robinson. Aided by 800 to 1,200 vessels, mostly helmed by British naval personnel, the unusually gentle weather allowed small boats to pick up men in minimal surf before ferrying them out to larger vessels. A second saving grace was Ramsay's creative use of Dunkirk's harbor mole or breakwater, which allowed larger ships to onboard men at a much faster pace. During the entire evacuation, from May 26 to June 4, 1940, the German onslaught never let up, while the rising number of sunken ships and boats littering Dunkirk harbor made passage to safety increasingly hazardous. Many volunteer skippers made multiple trips across the channel, despite the constant threat posed by the Luftwaffe. Some of the BEF soldiers who fought on the beaches of Dunkirk watched the flotilla ferry their compatriots back to Britain, knowing that they had no such happy ending awaiting their fate. Ordered to fight a rearguard action at nearby Calais, the men bravely held out against the Germans for several days of bloody combat, expanding the escape window for all remaining soldiers at Dunkirk. Sadly, almost all of the gallant force were killed or taken prisoner, paying the ultimate price for the good of their fellow man. As news of the miraculous escape from Dunkirk began to trickle into British news outlets, the citizens of Dover and other nearby ports soon saw for themselves the results of Operation Dynamo. Trains were soon marshaled at control point stations along the southern coast of England, intended to re-assimilate men into the country as quickly as possible. Volunteers worked tirelessly to provide food and clothing for the rescued men, while at Weymouth Station, railroad workers handed out blank Great Western Railway postcards so that soldiers could let loved ones know they were safe. Fully expecting a frosty reception on their defeated homecoming, publicly vilified with their tail between their legs, instead, the rescued men found themselves welcomed home like heroes, all at a time when Great Britain was in desperate need of a major morale boost, a little more than a month before their fight for survival in the Battle of Britain. Given the vast amount of equipment and weaponry left behind at Dunkirk, some historians believe that the loss of so many war assets left Britain badly exposed for immediate invasion by Nazi forces, had the Germans had the plans or will or ability to advance on England at the time. Churchill described Dunkirk as a miracle of deliverance, achieved by valor, by perseverance, by perfect discipline, and dauntless service, by resource, by skill, and by unconquerable fidelity. He then went on to praise the RAF, who had shot down 4 German fighters to their 1. In a speech that boosted British morale to entirely new levels of national pride.
Mr. Speaker, the disastrous military events which have happened during the past fortnight have not come to me with any sense of surprise. Indeed, I indicated a fortnight ago, as clearly as I could to the House, that the worst possibilities were open. And I made it perfectly clear that whatever happened in France would make no difference to the resolve of Britain and the British Empire to fight on, if necessary for years, if necessary alone. There are a good many people who say, never mind, win or lose, sink or swim, better die than submit to tyranny, and such a tyranny. And I do not dissociate myself from them. But I can assure them that our professional advisors of the 3 services unitedly advise that we should carry on the war, and that there are good and reasonable hopes of final victory. However matters may go in France, or with the French government, or other French governments, we in this island and in the British Empire will never lose our sense of comradeship with the French people. If we are now called upon to endure what they have been suffering, we shall emulate their courage. And if final victory rewards our toils, they shall share the gains. Aye, and freedom shall be restored to all. We abate nothing of our just demands. Not one jot or tittle do we recede. Czechs, Poles, Norwegians, Dutch, Belgians have joined their causes to our own. All these shall be restored. What General Weygand calls the Battle of France is over. I expect that the Battle of Britain is about to begin. Upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization. Upon it depends our own British life and the long continuity of our institutions and our empire. The whole fury and might of the enemy must very soon be turned on us. Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. If we can stand up to him, all Europe may be free, and the life of the world may move forward into broad, sunlit uplands. But if we fail, then the whole world, including the United States, including all that we have known and cared for, will sink into the abyss of a new dark age, made more sinister and perhaps more protracted by the lights of perverted science. Let us, therefore, brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
In tandem with Churchill's speech, the miracle at Dunkirk fired up every patriotic soul in Great Britain, instilling a legendary spirit of resistance and resolve, birthed from those brief few days in May and June when the BEF was brought safely home, quite literally to fight another day. The returned BEF forces were revered as war heroes everywhere in Britain, while newspapers filled readers with stories of heroism in the face of mortal danger. Up until Dunkirk, talk of the war had been the province of politicians and the press, but now every town and village across the island nation could count amongst their own the brave boys rescued at Dunkirk. While Hitler believed that his German army would win the coming Battle of Britain with ease, on the other hand, Winston Churchill and the people of Britain knew that the battle would not be lost, for an entire nation now had the same indomitable spirit that had prevailed at Dunkirk. While most people remember the miracle of Dunkirk for its mass salvation, the Battle of Dunkirk came with a heavy price tag, including 61,774 killed, wounded, or captured for the Allies, as well as the abandonment of most of Britain's weapons of war. While the Germans witnessed 20,000 killed or wounded, 100 tanks destroyed, 240 aircraft lost in theater, and 156 aircraft lost at the Dunkirk front, making the miracle of Dunkirk a vital morale boost to a nation's dogged sense of freedom.